Today, I get to introduce you to Danny and Andy Vallentine, director, screenwriter, dads. We talk about all kinds of wonderful things about being queer parents and about queer movie creation. This is a truly wonderful and exciting episode to launch season 3. I can't wait for you to learn everything that they shared with me and join me as we celebrate the first of many conversations that this season will bring. Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Welcome, everyone. Today, I am extremely excited to be introducing you to Andy and Danny Vallentine. And you may not know them as household names, but you should. And throughout the course of the conversation, you'll understand why I'm telling you this. But first, I just want to say welcome to the two of you. Please tell us who you are and about the members of your family.
Thank you, first off, Sam, for having us. So our Danny and I have been together for many years. How long has it been? It's been 14 years. I'm married for 10. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary.
Nice.
And we have a 3-year-old daughter, Florence. And actually her birthday is today.
Yeah, so happy birthday, Florence.
It's happy birthday. Wow. And so there's a lot of different ways that the queer community can create a family. How did the two of you decide to create your family?
It was definitely a journey. I think you're right. There are so many different avenues. And I think from the time that we got married, we knew we wanted to be parents. Instead of like wedding gifts, we asked people to donate to like a fund that we would towards a future child. And I think along the process of just like community building and meeting people and seeing how other people in the queer community made families, we kind of witnessed firsthand how they did it. And then we kind of, as we went along and it became more realistic and our life changed in a way that it was possible to welcome a child, that we kind of took all their experiences and our like observations from the outside in and tried to make a decision about how we wanted to proceed.
Excellent. And how did you proceed?
So we went through the surrogacy journey.
Okay.
So that is how Florence is here today.
Excellent. You decide that you're going to do surrogacy, and then you have to find an egg donor. Then you have to do your own donation so that you can fertilize eggs. Did you have someone in mind? Did you use a known egg donor? Did you have to search through the lists?
It is like surrogacy is like such a huge process to start. Like not only is it like financial, like uphill battle, but it is like navigating that world. There is the IVF doctor, there is the surrogate that you're looking for, and then there's also like the egg donor, right? And so those like three, you can go to like different agencies for all of those and like piece together your like perfect plan. We ended up like finding an agency in Los Angeles that kind of did all of those things.
Nice.
And so everything was like under one roof. And so that was while I think that like financially that costs a little bit more, there was like less organization on our side. There was like only kind of like a meeting with the doctor and like meeting with our coordinator, and then they took us through literally the entire process of like the start of like, here are possible egg donors to like, there's a baby, Florence here now, so I think that we had kind of, speaking to your question about like who the egg donation process, we had like, obviously we had like friends who were like in the mix, And we were like, do we just get like an anonymous donor? And we ended up like just going with a anonymous donor. I think it was, you know, growing up with gay dads will present, our daughter with different challenges that we did not face growing up, even though we're, gay, but like
Mhm.
those will be different challenges. So we
Sure.
thought the idea of like a friend that could have been just another challenging aspect for her. So we just went with a anonymous donor. So, um, yeah.
Something else I'll say about surrogacy, sorry to interrupt, but
No, no, please.
even like within the surrogacy process, there are so many other like different avenues to take within that
Hmm.
too. There, we ended up with a clinic that kind of, like Andy said, kind of had it all under one roof, so everything was kind of streamlined, but people can kind of like piecemeal it together and like use a good friend for an egg donor and use another friend to be the gestational carrier, and then they can use that like find their attorney and kind of manage it all themselves piecemeal, or they can go international
Hmm.
and so we got really lucky that, like I said, we had a couple we witnessed different people in our like friend group pursue different paths. And my mom's best friend, my mom lives in Tennessee, and she's had this friend that she's known for maybe 20 years now. And he and his husband had used this agency in Southern California, and they were able to recommend it to us, and that was kind of how we landed where we did.
That's a big piece of it too, right? I mean, you're right. You can piecemeal it together. You can find an agency, but then you start flipping through the proverbial phone book, which I know nobody does anymore. But
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
then you find dozens and dozens of agencies. But how do you know which ones are reputable? How do you know which ones are going? You're going to walk in the door and they're going to say, "Oh, we can't help you." Like, so having the opportunity to have a word of mouth referral from somebody is really truly feels like the safest place to start,
Hmm.
especially when you're part of the queer community,
Mhm.
right? So you found your egg donor. You now was your gestational carrier in LA as well, or did you have to travel?
She was actually very local, and that's something they asked us at the agency, whether we would be open to someone who was like in another state. I don't remember what we said, Andy. Did we say? I think we said our preference was somebody close by. Uh,
Yeah.
we wanted to be like kind of as involved and present as possible, so we were able to. I mean, we wanted to attend doctor's appointments and kind of be able to visit,
Yeah.
have a relationship with her. So that was important to us.
But I was gonna say, but it's also like we are fortunate that we live in Los Angeles, so it's like there are 14 or whatever million people in the county, so it's like we definitely out of like most places in the
Sure.
world, like there are definitely more surrogates or people interested in like becoming surrogates here. So it was like let's just if there's one that's interested in LA, like we can wait a month or two to see if somebody comes up and then we match and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. No, that does make sense. You're right. You're in a densely populated
yeah.
area in terms of geography, but you're also in a more progressive part of the country as
Hmm.
well. So if there's going to be 14 million people from whom there's going to be a larger pool of potential surrogates,
Right.
you're kind of in that spot, right?
Right.
Which
Yep.
is great for you to be able to have that opportunity. Was wanting to be a part of it as much as you could be, attend ultrasounds and doctor's appointments and things like that? Was that something that your surrogate, like that you use as a filter to determine who the surrogate would be? Someone who was okay with that? Or did you find that pretty much everybody, if you were close, sure, come to your appointments?
I think our sugar, her name is Anna. She that when we part of the matching process. So it's a two-way street, right? We don't just
Hmm.
like pick her like from a book and she has to be our surrogate or whatever. We
Right.
meet, we make sure that we are compatible and that we have the same goals for like what we want the experience to be like. And that was part of one of the big questions is kind of like, do you how involved do you want to be? Because I think some really want like somebody to be like super involved and like there and like talking on the phone constantly. And some people, Circus might want to be a little more like distant. Like Anna had her own children and her own family, and she was working. And so, if we were to put all these demands on her, that wouldn't have been realistic. But that was something that she had done one previous journey before us, and it was with somebody who was I think they're in another country even.
Mm.
So she really didn't get to experience that kind of like involvement, like because just they were so far away from one another. And I think that part of her mission and her second time doing it was that she wanted to kind of have like a more hands-on experience with the parents. And so that was something that we were looking for. So it was something that we really like connected on when we met with her for the first time.
That's amazing. That is because you do hear people traveling from different countries. I've had guests on my show who've been in different countries and so far away from the surrogate, and it must feel disconnected. So it's you know that you've got a baby coming, but I mean, you don't know necessarily the ins and outs. How did she
Yeah.
navigate it with her own family? Do you know? Did she how she talked to her kids about it and things like that?
Yeah, when we asked her about, we're like, okay, well, what do you tell your children? Because they were younger, like elementary aged.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the first time she kind of just said that she was like helping someone grow a family, and her children were they're like, well, they're so excited when the baby came and when our daughter came to, so I think it was just something that she had talked to them about, and they really, I think it's one of those things where children, we wonder if they're going to grasp something, but sometimes it's just a simple concept. You can just say, we're going to help someone grow a family, and like, this is going to be their baby. It's not mine. And you kind of lay the framework out for them. And I think that most children, when you expect them to like understand something that is kind of, big picture simple,
Hmm.
obviously like complicated in like the details. But I think that they rise to the occasion. They can understand it.
Yeah. That's it is pretty cool learning opportunity for them too,
Mhm.
I would think. And in just a chance for them to learn how to be supportive of other people and kind to other people. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I fully understand uh, that there's a cost associated with it. So she's being
Yeah.
compensated for it. It's essentially a job for her, but it's not a job like I don't know, delivering mail or flyers to somebody
Hmm.
or driving a cab. I mean, these are all services that are fantastic, but they have a different level of meaning, right? And I think it's such a
Hmm.
wonderful gift for her to be able to teach her children the humility of being able to help people create a family who don't
Hmm.
otherwise have a uterus to do that.
Mhm.
That's amazing. Are you still connected with Anna? Do you still keep in touch?
Yeah, we send her updates. We always on on Florence's birthday, so we sent her flowers today, and then we're gonna send her just kind of like a bunch of picture updates. But usually throughout the year, we'll kind of just send her picture updates and talk to her and see what she's up to and make sure she knows what's going on with Florence.
That's pretty, that is, and it also gives her kids, as her kids get older and have more and more awareness of what it was that their mom did, then they also
Hmm.
have the opportunity to see the updates too as they ask about it and wonder and things like
Yeah.
that. So that's cool. But there's a lot of people who don't stay connected to their surrogate. Once the baby's born, that's the end of the dynamics, and that works for them. So it's always I'm always interested to hear
Mhm.
how you stay.
Yeah, I think it's like you take a lot of cues from your surrogate on like what sort of like connection they want like afterwards. So I think that like Danny and I are both like we're like open to, you know what I mean? Like obviously, Anna gave us like, the most incredible gift and did the most thankless thing, right, for us and carried Florence for 9 months. So we have that kind of opinion that you take those cues from the surrogate and see what they want,
Mhm.
so I think that relationship can be different for every person.
Sure.
It's still, I can't like speak to the emotional journey that somebody goes on of like growing, a child in your belly and then giving that child to somebody else. I mean, that
Right.
is like the ultimate gift that somebody can do, right? And yes, like she knows it's like it's not her genetics and all these things. And there's like you do your mental health screening and blah blah, all this kind of thing to do that. But still, that is like such a huge thing, like emotionally to go through. So for Danny and I, and for other folks like listening, I think that like taking cues from that surrogate, from your gestation carrier of like what they want, it really kind of, it helps them. Like we weren't, whatever she was open to, that's what we were also open to, if that makes sense. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's I mean that's just a level of respect that you have for her that I hope that everyone would have for their surrogate
yeah,
to let them lead sort of as they're using their body. You're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Was it an easy process for you? You get your eggs, you fertilize your eggs. You've got how many eggs were retrieved? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I don't
Well,
remember. Do you
we
remember?
actually, well, for the so our process of picking the egg donor was kind of like the where we've had the most hiccups.
Right.
Um, it's like a very strange process, and it just felt like very it took a while to get used to. It feels very comfortable to like read through somebody's like biography and their like medical history and like make decisions about whether or not you want to create a person with this other person based on this, this
Mm-hmm.
binder or what this like information that you're given. Um, and I think that what ultimately ended up happening is we would like pick one and then it would have to go through, then they would have to kind of like initiate the process of getting their egg retrieval and then it would kind of fall through. Then we picked another one. And then finally we were kind of like, okay, this is clearly like going on. We're having all these hiccups. Are there any that have already donated that you have like that someone who's donated their eggs and they're frozen? And let's look at that list. And that narrowed it down for us. And I think that that was ultimately helpful because it made it feel like ultimately at the end of the day, I was like, does it matter that I was reading like what the person's like interests were? Is it I just want like to make sure that they're like a healthy person, that like ultimately what we want is like a healthy child and it's not doesn't really matter to us if they, have a BA in nursing or whatever. And so we
Yep.
finally found some that were frozen and that's the one that we picked and because we're like, okay, let's do it now. And
Yeah.
and not to like discount, that it was like a very important decision, but ultimately it was more like we just want to have like a healthy child at the end of the day, and we want to initiate the process. And
Yep.
after that, though, it was a pretty streamlined. Like I think we got really fortunate that everything kind of happened as it needed to.
Mhm.
We had to do one transfer, and the one transfer was successful, and then
Wow.
yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
And I guess the embryo, creating the embryos, we got like a good number of healthy embryos out of it. Um,
Perfect.
so yeah,
And did you divide the eggs and both fertilize and then just pick the best egg and use that to inseminate with without necessarily knowing who's whose and that kind of thing?
Well, we had actually done, I guess we had done two. So we had put two in. So we put one in from me and one from Danny. And then,
Okay.
so we were trying for twins, but only one took.
Right.
oh,
So
that's right. So I guess we did have one look at,
we
but
had one, but yeah,
Hmm.
there was still, Florence was still, this still came.
yeah,
So
There you go.
yeah.
And that can be hard to find is a facility that will transfer two eggs anymore.
Hmm.
I mean that's
Yeah.
been changing more rapidly recently, with more and
Hmm.
more places saying no, one at a time. That's it. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I think I think our agency still does it, but I'm not positive. But we're like starting the process right now of doing it again,
Right.
of baby number two, and we're only doing one this time. So
So
yeah,
just in
yeah,
case. Just in
yeah,
case.
yeah.
Will Anna be your surrogate again, do you think?
No, not this time around. It'll be somebody else.
Yeah.
So
And
mhm.
it is taxing on the body, so you can
Yeah,
appreciate that. That I was
yeah.
actually working with a couple recently, and they said their surrogate is on her ninth birth,
whoa,
and she's got
Whoa.
her own kids in that nine. But I was thinking,
Yeah.
wow,
Wow.
I don't. Yeah, I'm okay that
Good
my
for
body
her.
hasn't been pregnant nine
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, but I guess if you're in it to win it, then that's what you do. But yeah, that's
Hmm.
that's cool though. And so you're on your journey now for baby number two. Are you planning on having a whole team, or are you thinking that you just sort of go one at a time and see how you make out?
I think two would be the I think we
Two
call it
sounds great.
family,
Yeah.
yeah.
Then you're not outnumbered, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'm going to ask you another question that's kind of at the top of my mind. Now that I've had a chance to talk to the two of you and learn a little bit about how you created your family and the decisions you've made, you can appreciate how I might have thought that the two of you had adopted through the public system based
Hmm.
upon what you are most known for, at least in queer circles globally. Can you tell me a little bit about the work that you do outside of just parenting Florence, which is a full-time job all by itself?
For sure. So Danny and I made a movie that came out in June called The Mattachine Family. It was executive produced by Zach Braff, and it stars Nico Tortorella from Younger, and Juan Pablo de Pache from Fuller House, and Emily Hampshire from Schitt's Creek. And the movie, I directed it, and Danny wrote it. The movie follows a gay couple and their journey to become parents. And so we like to say that the movie was like loosely based on like our conversations that like we had had. The movie really follows Thomas, or Nico Tortorella, as he kind of like navigates life and sees all these different paths, that queer people can take to become parents. And so the movie, to plug it, is available on Apple and Amazon and YouTube to buy or rent. And so it was very exciting. It kind of did the festival round in the last year and played over 50 LGBTQ film festivals around the world. And finally came out in June. And so we're very excited to share kind of our thoughts via the film on like what it means to be queer parents,
Mhm.
and share. I think that like for me, what's like super interesting about the film is just that we had, when we made it, we didn't have a child yet. And so we had the desire, as we were directing and as Danny was writing, we had the desire to become parents. And so I think that that like really comes through
Mhm.
in the film. And then Florence was born a month after filming. And so if for people who don't know a ton about filmmaking and movies, really half the work is done, in with writing and then with filming the shooting the movie, and then the other half comes in the edit, where you really kind of like you do all these things, to add emotion and to cut certain lines, to make certain moments more powerful. And I was doing all of that, editing the film like when Florence was, a month old, 2 months old, 3 months
Wow.
old, and we were getting very little sleep. And so it's like a real when you like when I look back and think about just the time of when we made the film and where we were in our parenting journey, it's pretty fun and incredible.
Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know about babyREADY because you're listening to this podcast, so you know that we are all about queer family planning and helping you have the family of your dreams. But did you know that we don't abandon you once your baby arrives? We actually offer parenting coaching as well, and that's not just for the newborn phase, although we are there for that, but it's through toddlerhood and young children, tweens, and even through the teen years. When you need someone unbiased to lend an ear so that they can hear where your struggles truly are and help you come up with a path and a plan that feels truly right for you and your individual family, don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to be there for you. Visit us at www.babyready.info for more information. I'm just going to tell listeners, if you have not yet seen this movie, you need to see this movie. I had heard about it. I'd heard a previous conversation with with Danny and Andy on another podcast, and I sat myself down to watch it, and I feel like it's a movie that is so full of so much information as well as emotion and the journey and decision making and everything else, but so much information that it takes watching it a couple of times to be able to kind of really get it all because it just is so rich. And I started before I hit record, I started fangirling, but I have to like it's so powerful. And there aren't other stories like this out there for our community. I mean, it's not, there wasn't anybody hiding. Everybody was out in the movie because that's usually the quintessential queer story, isn't it? That somebody's
Hmm.
not out to their family, and so it takes to the
Yep.
last minute for somebody to come out. And there's some great movies, don't get me wrong, that have
Yep.
that fun movies like that, but your movie was unapologetically queer from start to finish and touched on a topic that almost every queer couple talks about. Will we have
Hmm.
kids? And if we're going to, how are we going to do it? And it's just, was there, were you both on the same page right from the very beginning? You both definitely wanted to become parents, or was one of you more in than the other when, I mean, before the whole Florence thing happened?
I think that, like I mentioned earlier, we had that like fund for a child at our wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think along the way, that's a very like idealistic thing to do. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and we got married when we were we've been together for so long. So we got married when we were like 24. And I think along the way, life happens and it doesn't unfold in the way you expect it to. And something about, we have in the queer community to make a family, you really have to make like a really conscious
Mm-hmm.
effort to become parents. We can't go into a bedroom and then walk out and 9 months later have a child. It's not going to incidentally happen to us. We have to
Mm-hmm.
really make a lot of effort. And so, there's a lot of different life things that happen along the way where it's like, okay, we thought we wanted to do this when we are 24, but now we're 26 and we're not where we thought we wanted to be. And I think that influences whether or not you want to embark on this like really taxing and difficult pathway. Whichever way you take, it's going to be a lot of effort. And so along the way, I think we switched from side to side. Like one of us would feel like, okay, we should just do it. If we don't do it now, we're not going to do it. And then someone, one of us would think, okay, well, maybe we need to, be able to live in a bigger house, or maybe we need to have a better job, or maybe we need to be more stable in our career, or whatever it was. And I think that it switched back and forth. So it was never, there wasn't a lot of time when we were both, until kind of the very end, when we decided to pull the trigger, that we were both kind of on the same page of like, this is the time we have to do it and we should do it now.
Mm-hmm. Because we're
And the,
deep in the weeds of making a movie, so now's when we should do
yeah,
it.
literally, yeah. But babe, I think you're very sweet. I think I was definitely more that you compared it to like it's both of us. It was definitely like I felt like I was the one who had like set this goal of like having to make a movie. Like that was like the dream since I was a kid. And that was like the first task, I guess, before like starting, to like move on and like become an adult and like have kids and all that kind of stuff. So, and I think that that is an important theme as well, because I do think kind of like within the queer community, there's a lot of focus on career and career ambition. And so that is definitely a theme that's explored in the film as well. You know, Thomas is a person who goes along kind of with the flow and then kind of has this desire to have children. And his husband, Juan Pablo Oscar, is somebody who's like very career focused. And it's that like balance
Mhm.
of is this the right time or not? And that obviously creates conflict, in any film you need conflict. So that's where it comes from and stems from.
No. And but it's true. You hear other people say it and it feels like such a cliche. And it's kind of like before people become parents, I always feel so condescending when I say to someone, well, I can tell you to the best of my abilities, but really until you're there, you just don't know. But it's kind of that same way. When you have a child, there's no perfect time to have a baby.
Yeah.
When
Yep.
you when it happens, you will jump in with 2 feet and you will figure it out.
Yep. Yep. And it's also, you know, there are a lot of, as a queer couple, you can definitely start the process, right? So it's like, for surrogacy, right? There's a level of like financial planning that you have to do before you get to that moment. but there is also a lot of like uncertain, like the timeline is like not set in a way that you would expect. So it is, and whether that's, through foster, if you do fostering or straight adoption, or surrogacy or whichever kind of path you take, like
Mhm.
there will always be bumps along the way and no set timeline. And so it's like, I guess when you start it, know that that is something that, it could be 9 months away or it could be, years away. You just don't know. And for every person, the journey is different.
Yeah, oh, for sure. That no, but that's a really real part of it is being able to recognize that it's going to take time. And I think perhaps that's, when we're young and we're thinking about having a family someday, even before we necessarily understand that we're queer, and so we're going to be partnered with somebody who isn't going to be able to physically help us conceive a child, then we just sort of see people having babies and they just decide they're having a baby and they get
Yeah.
pregnant and they do it. So it feels fast.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, no, it's not so fast,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So yeah,
Yep. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
pack your
Yeah.
patience.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So what happens now? You've got Florence, you're planning for baby number two. Do you have another
Mhm.
big magical movie moment that's going to also coincide with the next step of your family?
No, there's definitely, we definitely have more films and we have more stories to tell. And so that was kind of, after get your first film made, I always tell people it's like, leaving parenting conversation to like filmmaker conversation. It's like making a movie and getting it financed is literally winning the lottery.
Mhm.
You have won the lottery. Someone has decided to like write you a check, to bring your vision to life. And so we have won the lottery once,
Mhm.
maybe twice. So we've won it with having Florence and with getting the
Sure.
first movie off the ground. And
Yeah.
so now it's just working towards winning the lottery again. And so obviously you have all these things that you do to, kind of jumpstart so we have like multiple scripts in development. We have right now we're working on I gotta send Danny notes on our short The Letterman, which played at Tribeca 2 years ago, and it was in a ton of other film festivals. That's online as well. That's the story of two gay World War II soldiers. It tells like their story of love, and it's based on their actual love letters that were discovered a couple of
Wow.
years ago. We think it's the largest collection of LGBTQ plus love letters from that time. It's over
Mhm.
200 letters. Most people in 1938 to 40 burned their letters because it was, illegal to be gay. And if they were to be found out, obviously you'd go to prison. So
Mhm.
we shot this really great short film, and so we're working on that, turning that into a feature film. So yeah, so
But
fingers
one
crossed, and
one incentive
yeah,
is that the Mattachine family is dedicated to Florence. So if we have a second child,
it
we need
is.
to
We
we can't let
do.
her
Yeah.
carry that for the rest of her life that she's only one.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right. That's right.
yeah,
I got a film, and what'd you get? Yeah. What
yeah,
dads give
yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah. Maybe, babe, actually, you know what? Maybe we can change because it does come out. Mattachine, it's like an interesting thing. So for international distribution of the film, so it's out in the US and Canada, but it rolls out around the world like throughout the next like year and a half. So it comes out in Germany, I think, in March, and then it comes out in Eastern Europe in June. So maybe if we know there's another one on the way, we can adjust the credits,
There
add
you go.
plus new baby if we know in the next couple months.
There you go. Just can I just scratch this in real
So
quick?
for Eastern Europe, yeah, yeah, for Eastern Europe, yeah. Funny.
How do you feel about working together? Like, is it easy to work together to do this kind of a project and then come home at night and parent a 3-year-old?
It feels a little bit like parenting a 3-year-old. I think a lot of parallels. It was a learning curve. I'd say that.
Fair.
I think it is definitely, I'm a director by day. So I am directing folks every day on set, whether it's like Sephora commercials or like mental health documentaries or drag queen music videos or whatever I'm doing. I'm like, directing people my vision. And so I'm not a writer, but I'm a director who like partners with writers to, help shape story and all that sort of thing. So it was definitely when we first started like working together, like Danny said, there was some bumps along the way because we like had to figure it out.
Sure.
It was very much I can, not like to steamroll or I can be like, oh, it should be this or that, and Danny is not, that doesn't help Danny, to be like throwing 10,000 ideas at him. Like Danny definitely works better, like being like thinking about the problem or thinking about the scene and then going back and writing and then coming into good notes. So I think we've done like a pretty good job at like figuring out like how we both work really well or how we work together and yeah.
I think the key was that like in so much of our lives we're like we do things together. Like we're equals, like
Mhm.
as parents we're equals, as like in our life we're equals. And in filmmaking, Andy is like the director, so that is like a elevated position. And so I'm below him. I'm a partner and I'm obviously contributing a lot and I'm helping him, but ultimately he is like the person who is in charge. And so getting used to that dynamic was a little interesting. But once I accepted it and I understood it, then I think things went along a little smoother.
And you get home
Yeah.
and you close the door at the end of the day and you say,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the things that I think is important, because as we've touched on already, I think it's really important to make sure that we acknowledge that having babies within the queer community is not an inexpensive venture. Are you comfortable talking about the kind of money that you had to spend in order to be able to create the family you have thus far?
Sure. So it was definitely probably a little over like $150,000
Yeah,
to have Florence.
yeah.
So, and that was, um, obviously we like weighed all of these things, right? Because you can go other places to have it be cheaper. But like I mentioned earlier, it's like the agency that we picked had all these things together. And
Mhm.
so, knowing that it's just kind of a, if you're fortunate and that we were, we could not have started this journey, I guess, also any earlier than we did.
Mhm.
As much as like we talk and Danny and I talked about like him wanting to start earlier, like maybe we could have started elements of the journey earlier. We could have started the egg, that process
Mhm.
of like creating the embryos, but there would have been pauses on that journey because
Sure.
financially we were not set up until, our mid 30s to be able to do something like that.
That makes sense. And you talk about doing it piecemeal, but even the people that I've talked about doing it piecemeal often say that they're in that neighborhood for the amount of money that they end up spending over
Yeah.
time. So,
Yeah.
either you do it all together to one agency who then disperses the resources amongst the people that
Yeah.
they're coordinating, or you do it
Yeah.
place by place. And you had the opportunity to be with an organization and a facility that was local for you, so you could attend
Yeah.
appointments and things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have had the same kind of experience if you'd done it piecemeal and your surrogate was in
Right.
Idaho, right?
Right.
Just would
Yep.
have been different.
Yep. Yep. And there would have been like, even like those costs are different there, right? So it's
Sure.
like having, we were very fortunate that like, Florence, when she was born, she had like a weird jaundice thing. So she was like in the hospital for 2 days, with her like fun little UV light thing suit
Right.
that she wore. And then after 2 days, we drove 20 minutes and we were at our house, we were back home. So it's like, if we were, in Idaho or whatnot, like that would have the associated cost of going there and staying there. And then, would she have been able to fly after that? Or would we have been driving a couple hours every day to, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
2 hours or whatever, because you're not supposed to drive with an infant, in a car for very long. So it would have been, those are all things that you like kind of weigh. And, like I said, we're fortunate that we live in LA, that we have, kind of, I can everything's here. I can Amazon Prime something right now and it's here in 2 hours. You know what I mean? Which
Right.
is like which are what's it called? Our family in Hawaii. thought that that was just wild when we visited them over Thanksgiving. Danny's brother lives in Hawaii and his family, and they're like, "Oh, we Amazon something. It takes us 10 days to get." I was like, "Oh, we LA, we get it in
Wow.
hours." So, anyways,
Yeah. No, I I left. We went out of the house on Sunday morning and there was nothing sitting at the front door. I said to my wife, "Oh my goodness, has something happened to our Amazon driver? Because I think she has a delivery at
I
least
know,
once a day."
I know. Yep,
I don't think anything's
that's
happened to
funny.
our Amazon driver. We have had delivery since then, so I'm not.
Okay, good,
I
good,
just want to
good,
clarify
good,
that. But
good. They're okay.
yes, but it was funny. But it was funny. I just am so in awe of the two of you and the vision that you have both for your life and professionally. And the queer community is lucky to have voices in the two of you. So thank you very much for the work that you do and for sharing your story with me today. Before I let you leave, would you please tell me what is your very, very favorite part of parenting Florence?
I think for me, it's like seeing her, and I guess this is so far, right? So this is like something that
Sure.
evolves and changes. I think it's like seeing her discover things for the first time, and like processing that like through her mind. So and what comes to mind is we were very fortunate when Mattachine was traveling around to international film festivals. A lot of those film festivals I just went to. And then kind of the big ones we both would go, depending on if the festival was bringing us out or whatnot. And so we were able to go to the Melbourne Queer Film Festival in Australia, and
Nice.
Florence came along with us, and we
That's
were walking around the Sydney Opera House at like 6 p.m. and Florence discovered her shadow for the first time. And so like seeing her discover what that shadow was and like not understand and move and point to it and like realize, and we're telling her, oh, that's your shadow, it's where the sun, and we're explaining this, to our 2-year-old, who's like not getting it, but like getting that there's a shadow there and it's like it's following her. I think that's one of my like favorite things is just like seeing her like become a human being and seeing all these things, really for the first time, and I'm able to kind of see them as well through the first time through her. So
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd have a very similar answer. I think I had shared this with Andy and he just stole my answer. He's- I would say I've enjoyed kind of every
Not
stage of
true.
parenting. Like I liked when she was a little baby and you can like hold her and she's really sweet and cute. And there's something about like what happened between like 2 and 3 where just like she remembers things and she'll the way I'm so I love her curiosity about the world and about life and the questions that she asks and the things that she remembers and brings up, and it makes me realize that she's like this little person. So it is very similar to Andy's, but I am just like endlessly fascinated by watching her experience life and live life, and even like small little things, like we'll be reading a book and she'll point at a picture and she'll relate it to something that happened in her life, or the other day we were running and her crock fell off and she looked at me and she went like Cinderella. And it just like it like tickled me. I thought that that was so, and she makes me laugh and I can see that she knows that she's making me laugh and she likes that
Yeah.
she's making me laugh. Just I'm like I love her as a little person, and it's like seeing that she's like a person and not just like a thing that I'm there to take care of is
Yeah.
really like a wonderful journey to be on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with that said, it is definitely, I don't know why I'm bringing this up right now, but it was I think because you said 2 to 3, like definitely challenging moments. So
Oh.
it is, and then maybe that's a whole nother episode, but there is like definitely, the plane ride was great. People always laugh. I always I loved like posting photos on my Instagram of like the happiest moment, and you see us in this like fun place. And then I'm like, the next photo is literally her, like screaming, you know what I mean? Like wanting down, does not want to be in the photo. And like, that's real life. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yep.
there is like with social media, there's definitely the perception that like everything is like 100%. So like leaving this podcast, I just wanted to, it is
Oh yeah.
challenging. but it's definitely worth it. So,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Somebody once told me when my eldest was very young, and now he's almost 27, so it's been a few years, but it was true when he was really young. There's going to be something that you love and something that you hate about every single day of parenting. And if you can
Hmm.
embrace that, acknowledge it and
Hmm.
embrace it, then it makes working your way through the stuff that you don't love so much a little bit
Hmm.
easier, right?
Hmm. For sure. That's great advice and real.
Yeah, either that or wine, one of the two.
Yeah.
Either
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate that you took the time to chat with me today.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having us. And for everybody out there listening, the Mattachine Family is available on what is it again? It's on Apple to buy or rent, on Amazon Prime to buy or rent, and YouTube.
Perfect. And it'll
So
be in the show
yeah,
notes.
thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do. As a queer individual with colonial lineage, I want to first acknowledge the land upon which I live and work. Being from what is now known as Burlington, Ontario, I recognize the original ancestry of these lands as they span from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment and beyond. These lands are steeped in Indigenous history that benefits my community every day. The territory is mutually covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I stand is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. The land dictates everything about our ways of being. Particularly, the land teaches us about fluidity. Concepts of the binary system and heteropatriarchy were imposed by the colonials who were, at the same time, removing children from their homes, families, and all that was familiar to them. These same children were divided by the only two prescribed binaries recognized by the settlers, and they were forced to conform to a performative, gendered falsehood. The land doesn't operate under binary thinking. It is diverse, complex, and unpredictable at times. Rather, the land holds us and all of our remarkable paths and identities. Every organism and spirit has a purpose. It is from this understanding that I strive to live and grow.